Hello, I'm Guillaume Rose, CEO of the Monaco Economic Board, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the 8th edition of the CEMA collection MEBinaire, organized by the Monaco Economic Board, which is a chamber of commerce of the Principality, and also the Club des Entrepreneurs Monégasques en Afrique, CEMA. First, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Patrick Lecroix, General Secretary of CEMA, whose dedication and efforts have been instrumental in preparing this event. Over the past editions, we have explored various aspects and countries of French-speaking Africa, a region well known to some Monégasque companies and one that shares strong ties with the Principality. Since last year, we have broadened our scope to English-speaking Africa, which presents significant opportunities for our businesses. Our journey began with Malawi, and today we turn our attention to Kenya. Kenya is the leading economic and financial hub of East Africa. Kenya's GDP growth, which stood at 4.8% in 2022, accelerated to 5.5% in 2023, and is projected to remain strong, reaching 5.4% in 2024. GDP growth is driven by a thriving services sector, especially ITC and finance, and of course, agriculture, a traditional and dynamic pillar of the Kenyan economy. In 2014, Kenya became the first country among the 8 members of the East African Community to attain middle-income status. With distinguished guests and experts in the Kenyan economic landscape, this promises to be an insightful session. To introduce today's discussions, I now hand over to Frédéric Gertz, President of CEMA. Frédéric, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guillaume. It's always a pleasure to work together around the collection of CEMA for Africa with Monaco Economic Board. As CEMA, we are very proud to open new East African perspectives for our members, and Kenya is our focus today. There are huge sectors in Kenya, big businesses, impressive financial sectors, and we can say that Kenya has a real Pan-African vision for the whole region, which is around 500 million inhabitants in the region of influence. We have also the pleasure to have key people of Kenya representing different activities and who will give us a clear vision of how and why create and develop business in Kenya and the Eastern African region. I will introduce first Mrs. Soumeya Lusif, who is Public and Governmental Affairs in charge of Biomérieux. She is also responsible for the Kenya Committee of French Affairs in the region. Pleasure also to welcome Mrs. Agnès Guiteau, that we know also through the European Business Council Association. And Agnès is Executive Director, UK and European Union for Eastern Africa Association. Then we'll also have the pleasure to welcome Mr. Piyu Rotich, Managing Director of Kenya Invest, the Kenya Investment Authority. Mr. Othman Shawi is the Managing Director of Imani Energy, active in all the solar energy in the Eastern Africa, and also President of French Chamber of Commerce in Kenya. And last but not least, we have Mr. Marvin Murphy, Company Director and responsible for East Africa of MAN Kenya, MAN Group being a global leader in food, flavor, and fragrances. All those key people and the whole MEBinaire of today has been organized by our Secretary General, Patrick Lecroix. And Patrick thanks again for this organization of high quality. And Patrick, I leave you now the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Frederic. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank all the panelists who have accepted to be in this session today. It's a pleasure to welcome them. We would like to start this session with Mr. Pius Rotic. So, as Frederic said, Mr. Pius Rotic is the General Manager, Investment Promotion and Business Development Services of KenInvest, which is the Kenya Investment Authority, and Mr. Rotic is representing today the CEO of the Kenya Investment Authority, Mr. John Mwendwa, who is ordered the Grand Warrior, which is the most prestigious kind of award that one can receive in Kenya. Mr. Rotic, could you please give us a quick overview of the current economical and political situation in Kenya as we speak?
Yeah, thank you very much, and welcome the people of Monaco for this session, so that we can take you through what is available in Kenya. So once again, my name is Pius Rotic, and I work for Kenya Investment Authority as the General Manager in charge of Investment Promotion and Business Development Services. We are actually a government agency, and what we do is that we do investment promotion. We do give out advisory to the investors who want to invest in the country through facilitation. We also do what we call policy advocacy, and we ensure that the journey of an investor in Kenya is actually seamless, so that we don't face any challenges. So before I proceed, I would like to request you, sir, to share my presentation so that it can give you exactly what I'm talking about. Why Kenya and why now? Would you want to screen my presentation? I've prepared for you today the slides where why Kenya and why now. We want to have an overview of investment opportunities and some of the examples of bankable investment opportunities in the Republic of Kenya. What we mean by bankable opportunities is actually the opportunities which an investor can pick and go to actually implement, or actually seek a financier, so that you can be able now to proceed with your business in Kenya. Next slide. Next slide. So, technical problem.
Oh, no, I'm really sorry for this.
Okay. So why Kenya? We have a stable economy, and we are a leading vibrant democracy in Africa. And actually, we can say that we have over 200 multinational present here in Kenya. We have also a young and trainable and productive workforce, which is below 35 years. And we are actually leading Africa's green transition. We have renewable, over 90% of the renewable energy, which are at competitive rates. So if you produce here in Kenya, you will actually be producing products which are actually focused on green transition. We also have the logistics and innovation hub of the region. We have 4 international airports. That's JKIA, which is busiest airport in East Africa. That is Jomo Kenyatta Airport, 2 seaports, and 2 inland container depots. We also have pride ourselves of Silicon Savannah, because we are leading tech hub innovation in Sub-Saharan Africa. We have also incentives which actually are investing with us. 100% repatriation of profit or interest at over 2,000 acres available plug-and-play industrial facilities, which I'll take you through in the next slide. And we are actually a gateway to Africa and beyond. There's Pan-African market access. We have the East African community with GDP of about 336 billion US dollars. COMESA, which you are aware of, 716 billion US dollars. 3.7 trillion Africa Continental Free Trade Area GDP. And in terms of intercontinental trade agreements, we have an engagement with AGOA, that is African Growth and Opportunity Act, a facility with the United States of America. And also with the US, Kenya is discussing with the government of the United States, so that we can be able strategic trade and investment partnership agreement so that it can enable actually investors in Kenya to reach out to the US market. We also have the EPA, which is with the EU, which I believe Monaco is part of this, and the CEPA with the UAE. So all these are market accesses, which actually enables you to be able to invest in Kenya and make your business opportunity be very, very crucial. Next slide. We also have what we call special economic zone and EPZ incentives and investment opportunities. In terms of special economic zones, these are actually the zones which are actually focusing on giving an opportunity an investor to come and settle in the country without any problems. The export processing zones, these are the zones which are destined for export products. And in the special economic zone, we have the 3 gazetted special economic zones with an acreage of about 9,000 acres. And in this special economic zone, you can actually enjoy a lot of incentives, that is exemption from excise duty or import duty, corporate tax of 10%, withholding tax, exemption from advertisement fees, 100% allowance of on capital expenditure, and so on and so forth. For the export processing zones, 100 gazetted EPZs with 2,500 acres. We have with 10-year withholding tax holiday, exemption from advertisement fees and business service permits, 100% allowance on capital expenditure and perpetual stamp duty. And actually, you can have one license which enables you now to just plug and play in terms of doing business in Kenya. Some of the opportunities which are available in the special economic zone and EPZ, you can actually invest in private development of the special economic zone in Kenya or the EPZ facilities. You can, number 2, you can invest in the projects located within gazetted special economic zones and the EPZs with incentives which are lower power tariffs at the Naivasha special economic zone. Next slide. We have about public-private special economic zone and industrial parks. And in terms of categories, the public ones, which belongs to the government, we have about 6 of them with about 10,000 acres of land. With the private special economic zones, which are about 8, which includes the most prestigious Tatu City, Two Rivers Financial Center, Northland Special Economic Zones, with about 30,000 acres of land. Next slide. We have the Nairobi International Financial Center. And in the Nairobi International Financial Center, this is a zone which actually enables or attracts investment in the financial sector. And yeah, go back in the slide, go back. This is the one I'm talking about. So you can set up regional headquarters for financial institution. You can actually invest in infrastructure, office spaces, data centers, fintech, legal and advisory services, and you can actually leverage on the Kenya's digital economy. And why Nairobi International Financial Center? It's actually a government facility which have got backing of the incentives from the government, strong, very strong legal framework, access to global capital markets, projected returns of about 15 to 20% annual growth in financial services. Next slide. Now, this is the most important initiative which the government of Kenya has been focusing for the last 3 or 4 years or so, the African Green Industrialization Initiative, which aims to help African countries to develop significant green industries, that is in goods and services, to drive economic growth, create jobs, and boost trade. The objectives, of course, is to enhance export competitive green products and services. And since inception, the Kenya government has actually transacted about 2 deals, which are actually currently in the pipeline, with a cost of over $22 billion US. And the potential, it has the potential to create about 100,000 jobs and so on and so forth. Next slide. At the Kenya Investment Authority, we have actually curated about 114 investor-ready projects, which are really bankable. So if you can actually visit our website, you will find the ready bankable projects with the feasibility studies and teasers. All these projects actually account for more than 20 billion US dollars. And actually you can just come and plug and play. And on top of that, Kenya Investment Authority can connect potential investors to bankable companies, bankable projects with feasibility studies. So you are welcome to actually engage with us so that you can learn some of these projects. Next slide. So examples of the projects we have actually profiled. In the tourism sector, we are looking at attracting about 5 million US tourists. Currently, we've got about 1.5. And some of the investment opportunities are golf resorts, eco lodges, conference facilities. In the ICT sectors, we're looking at digital infrastructure, business process outsourcing, and so on and so forth. In agriculture, we're looking at leather and dairy products, dairy processing, and so on and so forth. In the services, we are looking at talent outsourcing, business process outsourcing. Next slide. In the agriculture sector, some of the examples of the investor-ready projects is Tana Integrated Sugar Project. We have the Integrated Livestock Development Project, Mombasa Aquarium Theme Park, and the Great Rift Valley Convention Center. These are actually investor-ready projects which you can actually discuss with us so that we can be able to connect you with project promoters. Next slide. Universal brand connectivity in the ICT sector, and we have also expansion of integrated command and control center, which is actually available for you to plug and play. Next. So if you look at the trade statistics between Kenya and Monaco, you'll realize that we actually export basically agricultural products, and we import to Kenya machinery and maybe high-tech materials, and therefore it gives an opportunity to the Monaco to have a little bit of an upper hand in terms of the export they export to Kenya. And so what does this show us? It shows us that the investors who are actually in this group can actually take advantage and invest in some of these sectors or increase trade between Kenya and Monaco. So we need to discuss further so that we can close this gap so that we don't have a lot of trade imbalance, and also we need to enhance some of these exports and imports so that we can actually increase our trade relationship between Kenya and Monaco. Next slide. So at Kenya Investment Authority, where we work, we have what we call a one-stop center. And this is actually where you are going to start your investment from. We are actually the first call of investors in the country. So once you come to Kenya Invest, you will actually be coming to the government of the Republic of Kenya, and from here you will actually be handheld so that you can establish yourself. You can reach us through emails, you can reach us through phone calls, you can reach us through physical interaction. You can come over, and from there at the one-stop center, which is a fully fledged government facility of Kenya, you can actually register your company. You can call us, you can email us, you can visit us. We register your company there. Within a day, your company is ready. You will actually obtain a tax or PIN registration. You will have work permit from the immigration department, which takes a little bit of a process, but initiation of application of work permit, you can start in our one-stop center. You can obtain the license in terms of tourism and hospitality sector. You can obtain trade practice and manufacture of medicine, and so on and so forth, because of the medical relationship we have with our pharmaceutical authority in Kenya. You can obtain your environmental impact assessment certificate. You can apply to set up within EPZ and special economic zone. You have also power connectivity there and there. And actually we are a true one-stop center. And the most important message I want to let you know is that this is the first interaction we are having virtually, but I would like to request you or invite you to come to the Republic of Kenya so that you can see for yourselves the opportunities which are available. Number two, the chairman said that you started this process with the Francophone countries, but I want to tell you that you could have maybe you delayed a bit, because if you could have started with Kenya being an Anglophone, you'd actually be making a lot of inroads towards making business in Africa, because Nairobi is now turning to be the main hub of business location of international companies doing business in Africa. Being also a UN, we host a UN headquarters here in Nairobi. We host over 200 multinational companies. We see a lot of companies now relocating from Middle East to Nairobi. We see a lot of companies relocating from down the South Africa to Nairobi because of the connectivity. We as I've told you, we have got Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where you can fly to any part of this world. You can fly to New York directly. You can fly to Europe directly. You can fly to any part of Africa within an hour. Actually, these days, we don't need to pay homage to the king in London in order for us to go to the US. We can go to the US directly so that we can engage with our brothers and sisters there. So I want to ask you that the best place to start your business is Nairobi, and that is Kenya. And we at the Kenya Investment Authority, we shall ensure that your business is seamless and is successful. Thank you very much, and be blessed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rotich. That was very interesting, and I personally believe that you covered very well the main points that we wanted you to speak about, which are, I mean, the main sectors that could be good targets for foreign direct investment and for Monaco-based investors, obviously. And you explained the role and the level of assistance that KenInvest can bring, you know, to foreign companies interested in investing in Kenya. So that was very comprehensive. Thank you very much. Now I would like to leave the floor to Frédéric Gertz for asking some questions to Agnes Guitao of the Eastern Africa Association. Fred?
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks again, Mr. Rotich. It was very interesting, the different presentations you have made. We have the pleasure to welcome Agnès Guitao. So to remain, she's Executive Director of Eastern African Association, headquarters in London. The association is 60 years old and, of course, benefit in London as a center of the whole expertise of the Commonwealth dynamic. Agnès, could you explain us the role and influence network of Eastern African Association and how you can help potential investors for Kenya and the surrounding countries? And maybe a word beyond, saying how could we have a win-win partnership with our club Entrepreneurs Monégasques in Africa?
Thank you very much, Frederic, and good morning, everybody. And it's almost difficult to go after my counterpart from Kenya, Piers, has spoken, but it's a pleasure to be here, to be speaking to businesses that are interested in our continent, and more importantly, are interested in my country, Kenya. So as Frederic, as you have highlighted, the Eastern African Association is an industry body that was founded in 1964. Initially, this association was set up in the UK and in Kenya. So we have two headquarters. Our regional headquarters is in Nairobi, and we have regional representative covering Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Uganda. Our role is really to provide a network of international businesses operating in East African region. I do have some slides. I do hope your technical guys can share them, but if not, I'm happy to just speak through. So we cover our companies from 25 different countries, and we provide two things. Information, we ensure that businesses, have access to credible information. We also ensure that businesses have a networking platform where you can share best practice and also forge beneficial or successful partnership. We also provide a monthly newsletter where we give you an analysis of political and economic factors that may influence your business operation in the region. If I can go to the next slide, or the third slide, please. And I wanted to really, before I respond to your question, Frederic, on how we can collaborate between the Eastern African Association and CEMA, given the fact that we are also a member of the European Business Council, which has a network of about 5,000, I think 5,000 to 6,000 companies. I think our role as business association is really to provide that platform where businesses can find a partnership, where businesses can get informed information. And more importantly for us is advocacy. You know, when you are in trouble, making sure that you have access to alternative dispute resolution mechanism, ensure that you have access to opportunities where you can manage stakeholder relations. As you're aware, when you're conducting a commercial business in a jurisdiction where it's not your home country, there is a likelihood of commercial investment dispute. So we provide that platform whereby businesses can find a fair playing ground. As the slide says, we have about 500 companies representing 25 countries, and regional focus is Kenya, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, DRC, Somalia, Djibouti, Sudan, and South Sudan. And even though we don't have region offices in all these countries, we do have representatives who are members of business communities in those countries. And of course, as we know, governments sometimes will make promises, but as you know, experiences from business community, sometimes it's very difficult to navigate sometimes the difficult terrain in the region. So I think our association works very well. We have been in the region for about 60 years. Therefore, we have experience. We know how business works. The next slide, please. Because the focus for this conversation is on Kenya, and as Pius has stated very well, Kenya is a regional hub and an entry to our region. And what I wanted to share is that even though Kenya's GDP growth is projected to be about 5.2%, the regional growth is about 6%, meaning that if you set your office in Nairobi, you have access, as Pius rightly said, you have access to all the other countries in the region. We have a fairly developed infrastructure, as some of you who have businesses there will attest to. We have a fairly developed communication sector. And of course, Kenya is well renowned for its financial services, as well as the technology advancement. And also, I think credit to the government. They have had incredible investment in infrastructure. I know it's not enough. So what happens is the development in Kenya's infrastructure means that most of our businesses, the cost of doing businesses is fairly reduced. The next slide, please. So that just gives you an overview of the market. And once you set up in Kenya, you have access to a population of a consumer market of about 500 million, with a combined GDP of about 600 billion. And also it just gives you an overview of how the other countries are projected to grow, which if you set up in Kenya, as I said, again, you have access to those countries. Please share the next slide. Pius already highlighted the economic outlook and the key sectors that are driving this growth for Kenya. So again, for Monaco businesses or for businesses with an interest in our region, I think it's always important to align your business with priority sectors that the government is prioritizing. And what happens is that you are likely to get the right support from the administration. So the agriculture sector, of course, we've seen Monaco and Kenya have already relations with Kenya exporting agriculture products, and as really re-emphasizing what Pius says, it's important for businesses to find opportunities in value addition to add value to already products that are coming to your market. The services sector, of course, hotel and tourism, financial services, and it's great to see that Nairobi International Financial Center has been set up, and also the Two River Financial Services sector. It means that Kenya can attract investment from the global financial services, as well as the legal sector. Manufacturing, I know, and I look forward to hearing from the member of KEPSA. We are still a long way to go, but there are some very positive strides from the government side, really trying to support businesses in the manufacturing sector and providing incentives for businesses so they can participate in this sector. But it's still, to be honest, we still have, there is a gap. And I do believe that the private sector can play a role, and the private sector from Monaco with expertise in manufacturing can play a role in this sector. Please share the next slide. So the government of Kenya, I'm sure you are all well read and well researched, has done a lot of work in trying to attract investment in the region, and Kenya runs very well in terms of private equity. And just in 2025, we attracted about $1.48 million dollars in private sector. And for me, why I wanted to share this is to show that as much as there are those big infrastructure projects, big projects by government, I think the private sector and members of CEMA the private sector has an incredible role to play. And the way to enter this market is partnering with companies that are already existing in the region, providing capital, access to finance, not only for Kenya, but for a lot of businesses. Access to finance is one of the biggest challenges that businesses side. So partnering either VCs or private equity companies entering our market and supporting these innovative companies that are coming up, I think it's a great opportunity for funds in Monaco to explore opportunities in Kenya's private sector, private equity space and venture capital space.
All right, thank you very much.
I have a couple of more slides. I think, Frederick, you responded just before you asked how CEMA and EAA can collaborate. I think there are a couple of areas. I think hosting forums like these ones, I think it's an important space for us to share information with your members. I hope that we'll have an opportunity to do joint trade missions to our region, and more importantly, using the platform of the European Business Council, using that platform to advocate for both our members in CEMA and also members of the Eastern African Organization, and also inviting your members. We host bi-monthly meetings in Nairobi and in London, inviting your members to participate in this forum, introducing your network to members of the Eastern African Association. I think that would add a lot of value to already what you're doing. And I do look forward to seeing you in Monaco, I think next month, and we do hope we have an opportunity to speak about the opportunities, not only about Kenya, but also the Eastern African region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Agnès. And for sure, we'll benefit of your experience. And as you said, we meet next month, so we will be happy to do that. Patrick, I leave you the floor.
Thank you very much, Frederick. And now we would like to go to Ms. Soumeya Lusif, who is the governmental affairs and public leader, public manager for Biomérieux for Africa. She's based in Nairobi. Soumeya, I would like to ask you the following question. I mean, why has the firm, as Biomérieux, which is a worldwide leader in public health, chosen to be based in Nairobi for managing 14 countries of East Africa? What was the engine behind this decision?
Thank you, Patrick, and good morning and good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. Thank you for your question. Actually, my answer is going to be brief because I believe in between Agnes and Pius, you got basically every argument that I had. So just to give you maybe a bit of how we function. So bioMérieux has a total of 6 entities in Africa, 2 subsidiaries and 4 representative office. Representative office is allowing you to handle your business through a network of distributors. So when we chose East Africa, it was absolutely not random to be based in Kenya for mainly a reason of accessibility. Meaning half of our team is actually dealing with distributors over 14 countries in East Africa. And as it was mentioned many times before, we have this connection through airlines that is extremely developed in Kenya, making our trips very easy. We also have half of our function at a regional level, meaning Africa level. And I know we talked a lot about East Africa, but actually Kenya is probably the best country in Africa to travel over the continent. And the same, Kenya is hosting many events, international events. So having people from abroad, from US or from France in our case and so on, being able to reach Kenya with direct flights, and you have many accommodation in Nairobi. You have never an issue to get a visa and so on, has been instrumental in directing the choice of Kenya to set our head office for East Africa, if I may say so. Also, maybe worth mentioning, it was said also before, we have the UN here, we have a lot of headquarters for NGOs. bioMérieux is operating in public health, so we also do develop a lot of partnerships with NGOs, and it was essential for us to be able to meet them face to face. Kenya is a great country for that. And I would say Kenya is also has a business model of encouraging PPP, public-private partnership, which is also very trendy worldwide, and it is also opening many opportunities for the company to go target that kind of deals.
All right, thank you very much. So you really do see Kenya as being the hub, not only for East Africa, but for the whole of the African continent.
For East Africa, I would say 100%. And now if your company is looking at expanding, definitely it's possible to do this via Kenya. Remember that Kenya has access to the coast, and Kenya is also supporting the markets that don't have access to the coast, such as Rwanda, such as Uganda, and so many other countries that are around us. Kenya has been probably one of the first countries in East Africa to target bilateral agreements with different countries. So there is like kind of we call Kenya actually too big to fail in our own community. Kenya has an aura when it comes to international market, not only for external, countries outside of Africa, but also building relationships with countries in Africa, and little by little, even the French countries of Africa.
All
the
right.
French-speaking countries, French-speaking countries of Africa.
And the final question for you, from the perspective of a major private sector operator, okay, coming from a big country such as France, arriving in Kenya, I know you were very instrumental in the development of this representative office in Nairobi for bioMérieux. Which were the main challenges? Because there must be some, all right, but what were the main challenges that you faced when trying to develop the bioMérieux office in Nairobi?
Okay. Thank you for your question. So I would say the main challenges, maybe we face them now, surprisingly, and I will try and explain why. It's mostly due to a global context, economical context, okay? So when we arrived in Kenya, it was 2018 and officially settled in 2019. It was during, I would say, the mandate of another president, and it was before COVID, before the Ukraine war, and so on and so on. In the meantime, many things have happened. And there is one thing to know about Kenya. Kenya is a country that has been, again, dealing a lot externally. So we have a debt situation to handle. And actually, the government that we have now is paying a lot of attention to that and is also weighing that burden. So I would say what can be a bit difficult at the moment, for the one who have been there for a while, is to bear the changes that are coming. And by this, I mean, regarding taxes, for example, you know that in Kenya, you have a large informal market, meaning that when we are transforming and updating the taxing system of companies, which is normal, and so taxes are increasing. It's actually a very small part of the sector of the I mean, it's a formal sector bearing that burden, not the informal sector, and it can be with a challenge to adjust at the moment. So it's a transformation phase that we are going through. But if I have one challenge in mind, this would be the major one. Kenya is also adapting standards regulation to the requirements of the world, as it was mentioned before by peers particularly. You can come and do business in Kenya, but Kenya is also willing to sell its products out and so on, and meet international regulation and requirements. So these adjustments have also an impact on the local manufacturing, of course. And I would say maybe the challenge is just the timing. The government has a very, very heavy and ambitious, I would say, a plan to reach this transformation that they want to go through. And implementation of new regulation, of standards, adaptation, new bills, it works. This works. But people are not always ready for enforcement. And we feel like the private sector needs a bit of time to adjust. So that would be the challenge I'm actually experiencing right now in our field.
All right. Thank you very much, Sumaya, and thank you very much also sincerely for all the help and assistance, that you provided for also organizing this seminar. I mean, thank you very much. I really want to...
You're most welcome. Karibu sana.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to shift to Mr. Marvin Murphy. Marvin used to be a director for MAN. MAN is a very famous company on the French Riviera in Monaco, being probably the main company in the grass area on food flavors, and fragrances. So, Marvin, I would like to know how you feel. And this being said, MAN Kenya opened its doors in 2018, and you've been, as I said, one of the main contributors to this success story. What were the main challenges that you faced before this achievement, and how did you keep the faith before the difficulties and challenges that you had to overcome at the time? I'm speaking specifically about the times when you really created MAN Kenya for servicing East Africa.
Great, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody, as it is for me here in Nairobi. So yes, I've got a few slides that I've just tried to relay some of your questions on. Patrick, if you'd be so kind to share the presentation.
Yeah.
So I think there's I guess as a business, and although I've had lots of experience in FMCG, the last decade has been in the B2B world. And for me, Nairobi was quite essential when wanting to look after the East Africa market. And I felt that although 9 years ago, we were trading from offices in Cape Town in South Africa, it just wasn't close enough to the people and or the region and understanding that region effectively. So it was, kind of a decision was made then to really kind of what I would refer to as eat, sleep, breathe, really important. So I think when we were setting this up, it was critical for us to really understand, most importantly, not only the customers we want to sell to, but also the consumers, because we often, with MAN, during my time with MAN, it's bringing in new concepts, new innovation, that potentially is from around the world and tweaking it to very specifically to African needs and or wants. So the challenges that I was kind of faced with was to combine what was effectively two brands, which between the Deli Spice, which is a seasoning brand, and MAN, was to obviously grow our client reach within the region of East Africa. And again, from a volume and value growth, that's what we're all here for, to try and drive a bigger presence. So if it's possible to move into the next slide, please. So the key things here for me were kind of about location, and previous panelists have spoken about location and why Nairobi. I think, I don't need to echo anything they've already said, but, the key thing for me was housing, schooling, and obviously access within the region, and having it as a really good hub. You know, we came in post the SGR, and again, even from today's perspective, you know, now as aforementioned by Mr. Rotish, the EPZ zones, the special economic zones, are really making it very advantageous to want to have Nairobi as an initial base. But again, choosing that location is obviously going to be key to, you know, what your business is and how it's trading. And even down to, especially within the flavor industry, it's also down to image, and therefore even down to building was important for us. Understanding the consumer preferences. The better you understand the preferences, the better you can deliver better products to the end user, and hopefully they'll purchase more. So that was really kind of critical, and that really comes from understanding the environment, what people do, how they do it, and when you're based here, you can really get to understand those important factors. The transition of distributors, we used to deal with this through others, let's say, being represented, but nobody can arguably represent it better than yourself. And having one important point of contact with clients was kind of critical for us. So that was something that we'd, you know, set up, that I thought was very important kind of going forward in that whole transitioning of setting up a local affiliate or entity, which thankfully to Patrick, we employed the services of EAD, and that was a very smooth transition. What do we outsource, what to procure? So this is all for me about the capital cost versus what you can outsource. There's plenty of, you know, having a warehousing for me was a big investment, but I wanted to use local partners who had logistics and distribution, and that was something that is available here for quite little cost. People, you can find some good people. There's lots of very well trained and educated people. Sometimes, again, if it's a very specialist topic or output, then you may need to look at bringing people into market. But wherever you can, I would highly recommend having local staff. Speed. So when setting up again, I mean, even then, the process to narrowing down all of these parameters, it took, you know, a good 8 to 9 months before you can, you know, really truly set up. So just ensure that you're being very specific, but also patient. Sometimes it doesn't always go as fast as you would like. Local loyalty. I found that this was another hurdle I'd faced, which was some other people had been here for some time, and they're, you know, when you're starting something in its infancy, and I think it's very much, you know, sort of manufacturers and clients are still very much in certain categories, are very much in their infancy at this still at this stage. People are quite loyal to their current suppliers. So again, it's a changing dynamic. The economy is getting more pressured. People are looking for value-orientated opportunities, and it makes it that transition easier as long as you're providing value solutions. The other hurdle for me was that we had about half a million in turnover. So the biggest and most important thing was to turn the business and this affiliate into a profitable center, and therefore growth was kind of paramount. And again, during the last 6 years of trading here, we're kind of faced in almost from year 2 or towards the end of year 2, the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was quite a challenge. So yeah, if we can go on to how we overcame those. So yeah, so typically we broke even on year 3 of trading, and again, it's about being cautious about investments over commitments. We've now got to a 7 times multiple after 4 years of trading, and that was something that you know, obviously was always an ambition, but turning it into reality was very important. We've managed to kind of ride and get double-digit growth every year, which again, the food sector, I think has been alluded in the earlier discussions, has been very much with the growing population remains key, and sticking with that. And importantly, you know, as we spoke about access to other countries, Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania have all been key contributors where we've managed to be able to secure customers and clients and have very easy access within the region to be able to trade there. And we've created diverse solutions across multiple categories, which fundamentally means that we are not relying on, you know, we're not one-trick pony, and there's a possibility across multiple categories to ensure the business is effectively balanced. Okay, if we can move to the next slide. So there's too many in here for us to go through within the time period, but I'll just pick out one or two. We've discussed the growing economy and the strategic locations. But again, for me, it's the expanding middle class, although there's a lot of pressure on individuals right now earning, as alluded to, from taxation purposes, but there is still you know, a very strong growth. And although it's a small dip as it stands right now, I think that will continue. And Nairobi's going from strength to strength. You can see that just in the way you can see various restaurants, you know, very much high-end restaurants that I've certainly seen over the course of the last decade. It's almost very dramatic, and the investment that's been put into infrastructure, etc., really makes life very different. On the weakness side, I mentioned the taxation and bureaucracy, but yeah. So let's skip on to the next slide just to go through the opportunities, please. So yeah, I mean, again, the AI and other tech-based things are becoming integral into everybody's world today. So it's very important. And again, opportunities for us backward integrating into agriculture and agribusiness is very important. So those are the two things that were key. And I think manufacturing and industrialization is only to be encouraged, because it allows you to not only provide jobs locally, but you're also, you know, sort of not having to face into high taxes and levies on importation. Yeah, and that's pretty much all from me, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Marvin. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for this brilliant presentation about the pros and cons for investing in Kenya. Now we'd like to shift to Mr. Othman Shawi. Othman Shawi is a member of the board of KEPSA, which is the private sector association in Kenya, and is also the president of the French Chamber of Commerce in Kenya. So quite a lot of experience. Othman, so KEPSA is the voice of the private sector in Kenya. What would be your best recommendations for the Monaco companies willing to consider trading with Kenya or investing in Kenya?
Thank you, Patrick, for your question. Before we begin, let me just apologize for my lack of formalism. I'm not wearing a tie today, but in my defense, I'm on holidays in the middle of the national park, which is also a testimony that internet is widely accessible in Kenya. Before I start answering your question, let me just start with some facts and numbers. I think it's always great to have that. If you compare France and Kenya in terms of size, they're quite comparable. In terms of population as well, Kenya stands at around 55 million people. The GDP stands at 110 billion in 2024, which is basically the seventh economy in Africa. When you look at the foreign direct investments, inflows, they were standing at $2.2 billion in 2023. France remains the fourth largest FDI investor with 10% in stock. Kenya is ranked number one in innovation, according to the Global Innovation Index in Africa. And yes, as alluded by Mrs. Gitao earlier, there is an issue in the manufacturing sector, which is contribution is below 8%, and the target by 2030 is around 15%. So when you look at the agricultural sector, which is basically 30% of the Kenya's GDP, The key advantages of Kenya is basically Kenya is the largest tea exporter in Africa, is the top producer and largest exporter of avocados with around 135,000 metric tons estimated in 2025. Cut flowers, it's the leading supplier of European Union with around 200 million contribution to the economy and 15% of the total exports. Kenya is among the 20 global coffee exporters. So if you look at that, Kenya has a lot of advantages in the agricultural sector, thanks to his natural position in the equator and the rainy seasons. Now, to come back to your question, I think like every explorative market, success in Kenya requires a clear understanding of the market needs and a competitive assessment. I think we saw that in Marvin's presentation. One of the key things is China and India, Kenya are the natural partners of Kenya and supplying low-cost manufacturing goods. So that made the market price sensitive, and it's a key factor for the market entry. So investors must differentiate through quality, value addition, and innovation to compete effectively. So the key recommendations: understand the market demand and the competition. So Kenya is a price-sensitive market, but consumers and businesses are increasingly seeking for high-quality alternatives. Identify gaps in the local supply chains with some premium products. As mentioned before, the Kenyan middle class is growing. I think it's estimated at 8.3 million people, 15% of the population. And remember, Kenya is a country with more than 50% of its population younger than 18 years old mark. So that's one of the key things to get in mind. Advice number 2, leverage Kenya's strategic position. As mentioned before, Kenya is a natural corridor for the landlocked countries, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, the northeastern part of Congo, even Somalia. You look at the trade between Somalia and Kenya, and a lot of imports of Somalia are done through Kenya. One of the questions I saw on the forum was about the corridors. So the main corridor is Mombasa to Kenya and Uganda, and there's a rail which is called the SGR, the standard gauge railway between Mombasa and Nairobi and nearly Nakuru and Naivasha now, which will access the special economic zone that was mentioned before, the Naivasha special economic zone. But there is another corridor that has been established with at least a port in Lamu, and the idea is to target Ethiopia through Lamu, but here I think we're still lacking a bit of infrastructure from within. So basically a corridor that would reach Ethiopia through Garissa. Target number 3, advice number 3, target the high growth sectors. So as mentioned, renewable energy, I think it was mentioned already that Kenya is already, the energy mix in Kenya is already green. More than 90% of its electricity comes from renewables. However, there was a moratorium on PPAs, so that was basically imposed by the parliament, and I think this moratorium should be lifted soon, which will basically give a lot of opportunities for companies that are in the renewable sector. As mentioned before, agriculture, agribusiness, and agri-processing. So yes, agriculture contributes to more than 30% of the GDP, with the exports in the perishables that I mentioned before, tea, coffee, avocados, and flowers. However, 30% of the food exports are value added. So adding local processing for expense could be an opportunity. ICT and fintech, as mentioned before, Kenya is considered as the next as the next hub for innovation in Africa, with the Savannah. Sorry, I'm sorry. There are some people around me coming. Let me just fan shifts. Yes, it contributes. The digital economy contributes to 7.7% of the GDP. If you look at M-Pesa alone, which is one of the success stories in Kenya, which is basically the mobile banking, it's alone handled 33 billion transactions, worth 162 billion in 2024 dollars. So basically, if you look at it, it's one of the means of payments in Kenya. You can transact with mobile banking everywhere here. And when companies will, or when you will visit Kenya, you will see that it's quite adopted, and I think it's one of the first modes of payments that is used by the Kenyan citizen. One thing that that was mentioned as well is SEZ and EPZ, special economic zones, export processing zones. I think as seen in the presentation from Mr. Rotich, there are some incentives that are here to basically attract the global manufacturers. So please seize those opportunities. And I think this is it for my advices to companies in Monaco. So basically, as I mentioned before, just get to know the markets, understand where you service and products do make sense, and whether they don't do not hesitate to look at another market. However, the Kenya's economy is resilient. If you look at the private sector, targeting the private sector will always ensure you of getting paid. So I think that's basically my advice is for the companies based in Monaco that would be willing to come into Kenya.
Thank you very much, Othman, for these recommendations, and obviously, you know, I'm sure that all the participants to the seminar of today will keep in mind that they could always contact KEPSA for advice and recommendation, you know, as well as all the other panelists who had the kindness to help us today, you know, during this forum. Talking about it, I would like to mention that should anyone like to receive the presentations that were displayed today, please do not hesitate to contact CEMA. We will be pleased to forward these presentations and give you the contacts, you know, of whoever can help, you know, and provide local assistance. So do not hesitate to contact CEMA and to contact me in this respect. We still have a little bit of time for taking some questions from the audience. Justin, maybe you received some questions from the audience?
Yes, indeed. Many thanks, Patrick, and to all the different protagonists. It was very clear. I'm Justin from the Monaco Economic Board, and I work with Guillaume, and I think all the presentations and slides really gave a strong indication of the budding, growing economy of Kenya. So we've had several questions from the audience today. So may I start with the first one, which is about the development of the second port around Malindi, because this development is very important for the sub-regions. And may I ask this to, first of all, Agnes and maybe Pure Rotich as well, to answer this question, please?
Justin, I just had my name. What was the question? Sorry.
So please, would it be possible to know more about the development of the second port around Malindi, because this development is very important for the sub-region?
So the government of Kenya, and Pius will correct me if I'm wrong, has under the Vision 2030, the developmental agenda, has highlighted Malindi, and I think that's the LAPSET project that connects Kenya to Djibouti, Ethiopia. It's through road and port network. However, as you all know, Kenya's debt situation has escalated, and whereas there has been initial investment to open up our region, to open up Kenya and connect it to our neighbors, I think that is taking some, or in a diplomatic response, there are other priorities at the moment that Kenya is handling. However, I think as Pius presented, this is an opportunity to bring in private capital to support Kenya's infrastructure development. I know there are conversations with the regional DFI, so the African Development Bank, the Afrexim Bank, to support this, as well as international funds who can support this development. To be honest, I cannot tell how far this is, but also noting that this is an intergovernmental infrastructure project, so you will need the commitment of other countries, Djibouti, Ethiopia, to do their part. This is something I know businesses like members that we represent, this is something they look to see its completion. And from the Kenyan end, I do hope that they honor that commitment to develop that infrastructure. However, in response, it's just financing and priorities for Kenya, as you know, at the moment, to healthcare, education, and national infrastructure. But where there is a will, there is hopefully going to be an action soon. I don't know whether PUC can give a response from government side.
We have also Othman that wishes to perhaps complete what you mentioned.
Yeah, apologies. So basically, indeed, the port of Lamu does exist. It's been constructed. The initial plan was indeed to have it through within the LAPSET, and it's one of the key elements of the LAPSET. Yes, there were, as mentioned before, the part that we're lacking now is the corridor that, with the infrastructure that will link the ports to Ethiopia, for instance. But as far as I know, there had been some imports of fertilizers to Ethiopia via this port of Lamu. There had been, I think, more than 60,000 tons. I think there's been 3 ships of 60,000 tons that have been discharged in this port.
Perfect. You're absolutely right. It's the port of Lamu. Thank you. Does Agnès or anyone else wish to say anything else?
What I can also say, Ethiopia was the initial partner for Kenya. Ethiopia has explored other partners like Somaliland. I know there is a maritime dispute between Ethiopia and Somaliland, which has now been resolved or mediated by the Turkish government. So I think Ethiopia has explored other probably cheaper or cost-effective infrastructure to open up. Ethiopia is landlocked, but this is a great investment if Kenya goes ahead with it. And because it's under Kenya's developmental agenda, I'm sure it's going to be completed. When and how? I think this will depend really on financing. So if the French government or other funds can probably have conversation with Kenya supporting the financing side of things, sure, the Kenyan team will be welcome.
Thank you very much, Agnès. We have a second question from the audience who would also like to have a bit more information on the positive role of the economic EAC and the advantages of taking part in this community. Would you like to answer this?
Yes, I can respond that. Look, businesses look for economies of scale. Kenya's population is around 55 to 60 million people, right? So the business, you're looking for the wider market. So the fact that we have common market, free movement of goods and services, hopefully a monetary union, probably in my lifetime, I think that can only be a positive step for businesses, because you're looking for a bigger consumer market, right? And so what we've seen, the East African community, in my view, and is one of the most integrated region. So there are conversations between our state, our governments, our regulators, and whenever there's a dispute, perhaps a trade dispute or issues around non-tariff barriers, I see the intervention of governments very quickly. Othman, I don't know whether you can respond. So the East Africa Community integration, the reason why it's successful, if you compare it to the West Africa or the COMESA region, is because it's partly driven by the private sector, right? So the private sector has had great conversation and constantly have conversation with our public leaders. And so government realized that governments alone don't create jobs, right? So government realized the economic value of an integrated market and have done whatever from the political side, whatever it takes for them to ensure that there is ease of doing business across our region. And also most recently, of course, you know, DRC, despite the ongoing crisis, DRC joined the community. Somali also joined the community. And so it's just probably, hopefully, Ethiopia will also join the community. What that means is for you as a business, if they're in Monaco, it means you have access, not just in word or but access to this market. And also there is harmonization of some of the regulations. So you can be able to do business easily. I don't know from KEPSA perspective what your view is.
I think Othman might be gone, it seems.
One last question, perhaps, to finish off before a word of conclusions. We had a question also on in terms of foreign direct investments, which are the countries then that invest the most in Kenya since the end of the pandemic? And has there been a shift in the regions, or is it still the same countries that invest heavily in Kenya? Who would like to answer that question?
Oh, before I respond, I think I've spoken so much. I'll let someone from Kenya Invest. I
think Pius has left, unfortunately.
Traditionally,
Othman, maybe you want to answer this one?
Yeah. One of the usual suspects is always Mauritius. One of its consortium groups called IBL has been very active in investment in Kenya recently, in different sectors, in the sugar industry, in the FMCG with Naivas, with basically renewable energy with a solar company. So yes, one of the keys, I think in the first three, it's UK, Mauritius, and the US. So the pandemic has not really changed the dynamics exactly.
If I can add, Justine, China is also a key source of FDI for Kenya, not only from government sources, but also from Chinese private companies. We've seen an influx of private businesses setting up in Kenya, but also investing in some of the listed companies in the country. So it's interesting to see Mauritian companies, Mauritian companies seeing inter-Africa investment, and I think that's a positive step, and also a confidence boost for businesses from Monaco. If our African businesses have confidence in Kenyan market, I think that should be a confidence for you to also consider setting up or opening your operations in Kenya.
No, a lot of Monégasque companies actually do business and work with Mauritius, and you also mentioned Djibouti, which are two countries that the CEMA and the MEB have been to in recent years. So there are strong connections maybe to be made there. Well, thank you very much, Agnes and Othman, for answering this last question. And I believe that I will now pass the words to Patrick and Frederic to finish off.
Yes, thank you.
This wonderful seminar.
Thank you very much to everybody. Time is over, unfortunately. We could speak about Kenya and East Africa for hundreds of hours, that's for sure, but we need to cut it now. Thank you very much to everybody. I hope it was of interest to you, and certainly it was very interesting for us. Once again, Guillaume, yes, obviously you will speak. Once again, please keep in mind that should you need the presentation, should you need introductions to some of the people who can help you set up locally in Kenya and East Africa, do not hesitate to contact CEMA. You know, I would be, for instance, very happy to put you in touch with Marvin, who is hands-on, you know, and could help in this respect. It was a pleasure, you know, for us to have you today. Guillaume, maybe you want to say words of conclusion.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. More than words of conclusion, I want to say that this webinar has been so useful, including for me and Justin, that we have to have a serious discussion with our friends from the CEMA, maybe to consider organizing a trade mission in Kenya in 2026. I think that we've got some material for it, and very interesting issues have been solved during this webinar. So I think that we could consider it definitely for 2026, and it could be a good way to go on in our relations between the two countries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick. I leave you the last words.
Thank you very much, and looking forward to having you on the next MEBinaire, you know, on another country. Frédéric, words of conclusions?
Yes, maybe the two last words, the same idea as the idea of Guillaume, to organize an economic mission in the coming year or years, 2 years. Special thanks to all the participants and also to you, Patrick, for the organization of this high-quality webinar. And it will be a pleasure also to welcome the participants, if they are available, for our 4th edition of our Africa Day, CEMA, organized with Monaco Economic Board, on the 17th of November this year. It's also a great day for Africa, and it will be a pleasure to welcome all of you. Thank you so much.